This is the Texas Land Guys podcast, hosted by brothers Tim Dosh and Tom Dosh. With their partners David Marshall and Trip Rich, they have built DMRE, the leading land brokerage in Texas. With decades of experience brokering deals between landowners and real estate developers, they take you inside the deals that move the market.
Okay, well, welcome to the Texas Land Guys podcast. We have a special guest with us today here in the Dallas office, Ryan Duffie. Ryan, good to have you on.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be here.
We've been looking forward to having Ryan join. I've got Tim in Houston. Tim,
hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, Tim.
We're good. We're good. Ryan and I just got back from the mountains, and so I think I was gonna say we're thawing out, but I think we thawed out really fast from the mountains because it's very warm here in Dallas. But we had a lot of fun. We took 5 of the other guys up to Park City, Utah, and did a leadership retreat with the other leaders in our Dallas office, and had a pretty good time.
It was awesome. It was such a great trip. It was a lot. We did a lot in about 2.5 days, but it was a good balance of team building, just getting out of the office, just not doing work stuff, but also just really casting vision and taking stock of kind of our team, our growing team, and so it was a ton of fun. And like you said, a great opportunity to get out from the heat here in Texas.
We hit the ground running. You may not know this about Ryan, but he's a pretty good athlete. So we've gotten to experience that on the basketball court a little bit with some DMRE basketball. And then he actually was on one of the Baylor practice squad teams when he was at Baylor, which is pretty cool for basketball. But I think you hit the ground and played some mountain golf in Utah. That was a new experience, right? Playing in mountains?
Very much so. Yeah. I get to play about 2 to 3 rounds of golf a year. So at this point, I'm just there for trash talking and for fun. So I'm not going to be setting the course record anytime soon. But it was awesome. It was great. It was awesome to be in the mountains, to be with our team. Really, really beautiful. So.
Yeah. Park City.
It sounds like you guys had some incredible conversations too. I heard a lot of the fun stuff you did, some hikes and golf and some incredible food, but then also some really intentional talks. And Tom shared a little bit about kind of the Advantage book that you guys read before you went, and then some of the conversations you had as a team around that sounded like they were really incredible conversations.
They were. It was a great book to read leading up to our trip. And I felt like it really helped facilitate a lot of really healthy conversation from our leadership team. And so, the idea revolving around organizational health and just kind of talking about some of the milestones and good questions to be asking. But, I think one of the big topics that we talked about was, healthy conflict within our team, being able to, have the rapport with guys to be able to approach them on those type of things. Really the importance of clarity. But overall, I thought it was a really, really helpful book to help guide some really good conversation amongst our team.
Yeah, it ended up being just a playbook, like Ryan said. Patrick Lencioni is such a good business writer and the Ideal Team Player, one of his other books that we've based our core values of humble, hungry, smart off of.
Yeah.
Another great book. And so, we read this one together and all 7 of us came really prepared. So I thought it was fun. We had kind of a cool mountaintop experience on top of a mountaintop, which was kind of ironic, but we climbed Clayton Peak outside Park City the morning, I guess our second day there. And it was a pretty good hike. I think it was like rated hard on all trails. There's some good like scrambling sections at the top and pretty good elevation, like one of the highest peaks in that area. It's not as high as Colorado, but one of the highest peaks in that area. And we got on top, and it was like we didn't want to just immediately go right back down the mountain because that's normally what you do. Everybody takes a picture, and then it's like, okay, well here we go back down the mountain. So we spent it was maybe over an hour on top, just talking and spending time together and having really good conversations. So that was pretty cool.
It was.
I think we'll all remember that.
I'm still sore.
Yeah.
You got to watch doing anything physical with Tom, because Tom is like such an incredible athlete and so much endurance. If you go on a hike with Tom, it's going to be punishing.
I noticed that. I think for the agenda, it was like, we'll do this little 2-mile hike. And somehow it turned into a 5-mile hike. And
that's right.
Yeah.
To the top of a mountain. You have to go to the top of a mountain.
Unfortunately, the 2-mile Yeah, that was on the agenda. And then we found out that was closed and you had to go the long way. So we went the long way. But yeah, we had a afternoon activity plan that we scrapped because we were like, I don't think we can get everybody out on mountain bikes. We're all going to like crash into trees or boulders or something and not make it out alive. So, but
I'm so glad you guys did that because you guys, I know part of it was a celebration because you've had the fastest start, I think, ever for the Dallas office, and you're having a record year this year. So it's a neat celebration of that. But then also, to be so intentional about if we're going to be a team, we have to communicate and we have to learn to always be improving that. That's you're never going to make it as far as being a good communicator with each other, but having the hard conversations, which I think are so hard on teams. I think a lot of us who get in this business and are good or naturally people pleasers, which means we don't like to have the hard conversations, but it's critical if you're going to grow together and do this for a long time to have some of that conflict in a way that is constructive and not destructive, to the relationships.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really good. I think it's obviously, it's a lot to ask, for 7 guys to hit pause on their work and really try to unplug and be present. And so I was appreciative of the other guys for doing that. I thought that really made the big difference for our time together. Everybody coming prepared and like you said, Tim, I think having, a couple of those discussions around, hey, what are we doing well and celebrating some of those, but also looking forward to, hey, what are some of the things we can improve? And as our team continues to grow, kind of what does this next chapter of DMRE in Dallas look like? And so I think, to what Tom was saying earlier, one of the things that really resonated with me from that book was kind of this analogy that was given where it talks about kind of the difference of like a high school golf team versus a high school basketball team. In golf, you have 5 guys that kind of go out on their own and go score individually, come back and total up your score. And how that really resonated with me was as far as brokerage goes versus, a basketball team that's obviously cohesive and working together. There's rebounding, there's passing, kind of all the things that everybody's gelling together. And so, overall, I was just really grateful for that time together, even being kind of a 2 to 3 day trip. It was really good to be able to have everyone present and really focused and locked in on kind of what this next season looks like for us.
I know one thing you guys talked about was the working genius, and Tom actually shared something with me about our partnership with Tom and I and David and Tripp. And it's amazing how when you look at that partnership and then also the Dallas team, how every single person has different strengths and how well they complement each other. In a lot of cases, it was the opposite strengths, just the way each person processes information and the way they work. And I think it just speaks so much to the value of the team, that you have these incredible strengths, but then you have vulnerabilities. And to have people to have the opposite strength, to learn to have that healthy conflict and talk through things and get to a place where there's understanding of, hey, we're better together because we fill each other's blind spots and not the things that frustrate you about that person are actually the things you need from that person.
Yeah.
And learning to work together that way. I thought that was really powerful just to see that. So
I totally agree. It was great to be able to take a look and just have a refresher to see everybody's skills and strengths on paper and really to compare that and say, okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense now that I see that, and taking some time to refresh and really see how we're a team, made up of individuals with different skills and strengths and how that all meshes together. And I think that's been really impactful for, how we've looked at hiring as far as new team members go and really evaluating, new individuals that join our team, what their great skills are and how could they fit into a void that we have on our team right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's transition a little bit into introducing you, Ryan, to the audience, because we haven't had the privilege of having you on the podcast. So thanks for being willing to hop on today and share a little bit about yourself. You've been working here in Dallas with me now for, I think we're going to be coming on like 5 years here pretty soon.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. The time flies. I still remember, so we office right here in North Dallas. And I remember we met like right across the highway when we first met at Snooze for breakfast.
Yep.
And it was one of those meetings where I was new to town and we were connected through a mutual friend. And it was, you're a believer who's also in the business, good guy to meet, but also maybe there's an opportunity to, get Ryan and bring him over to DMRE. And so I remember we had a great breakfast. I really enjoyed it. With a lot of like-minded, just like the way that we were wanting to educate our kids and just different things we were interested in. And I remember asking you, do you know anybody that I should talk to? And I was hoping you'd be like, well, I'd be interested. And then you did say, well, yeah, I'd be interested. And I was like, yes, this is great. So I don't know, what do you remember about that?
Yeah, it was a really timely meeting. I felt like the Lord had his hand in that. But I had been at Cushman for four years at that point, and was feeling like there was a pull to kind of do something different. And so our meeting together was really timely. But I think you hit on it. I mean, we resonated. I remember walking out of our meeting together because I wasn't exactly sure what the context of our breakfast was going to look like, but I walked away thinking like I'm going to go work for DMRE after our time together. And so it was really good just to kind of hear the vision. And obviously I'd heard about you and Tim and what y'all had done down in the Houston market and the plans to grow the Dallas office. And so it was really an ordained thing.
Well, and I think that, what was interesting about it was, and we can back up and kind of get into your history, was that, we had a lot of connections. Like I said, like I had friends at Watermark. You were really connected at Watermark. You were from Dallas. You went to Baylor. So Texas guy,
That's right.
And I think you had gotten into the business a little bit later. So maybe we just back up for a minute before we dive into kind of DMRE and that part of the story. But you want to kind of tell the audience about your path to brokerage, because it's kind of a non-traditional path. A lot of the people that get into brokerage, they do it like right out of college.
Yeah.
Or maybe they even start interning in high school.
Yeah.
But yours is a little bit different.
It's always interesting. I'm always curious to talk to other fellow land brokers to kind of figure out, their path, because it is a pretty unique field that we're in. And so, so I'm born and raised here in DFW. My family is still here. I'm married. I've got 3 kids. Got a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, 4-year-old, which that's been wild growing up here in the Metroplex, just to see the just tremendous amount of growth. I grew up in Grapevine, so Grapevine Mills and Bass Pro and Gaylord was not there.
It's crazy.
Growing up. And so, but I think coming out of school, I really lacked vision and not understanding kind of what my skill sets were and what I really wanted to go do. I envied kind of my friends that they knew they wanted to go be an attorney or an engineer, or they knew it right off the bat. And I struggled with that. And so, coming out of school, I graduated in 2008, which, great time to be coming out looking for a job. But wound up with a company here in Dallas. I had some friends here that were working for this company called the Urschel Recovery Science Institute, which is kind of a new cutting edge technology and approach to addiction recovery. And so it was obviously the technology and the consulting piece of it, but my job, really for lack of a better term, was kind of a life coach, where a lot of the patients in this program were similar aged guys as me.
Wow.
And so really my job was to go hang out with these guys essentially as they kind of would be walking through rehab. And so it was there essentially just to be able to be an encouragement and go do fun things together, but a lot of long hours. And but it was really I've had a greater appreciation for it now, looking back, just because I feel like it gave me such a unique perspective as a 22-year-old coming out of college, because here I was with a lot of similar aged guys that, by all means had a ton of wealth, they lacked for nothing, had everything that they would ever want in this world, but were just broken. And so it gave me insight into family dynamics. There was a lot of divorce. There was a lot of absent fathers. And so that for me was really a pivotal point and insight, just really right out of school. So I was grateful for that.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, think about being that young and to be a life coach, to graduate. Think about, I don't know, when we were young, we all kind of thought we had maybe a lot of wisdom. Some of us are probably more arrogant than others, but to actually, be thrown into that had to have been hard. I mean, because they're going through real challenging, just dealing with addiction, and then you're there trying to help them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it's going to turn out.
Very much so. A lot of hard situations. But also, I think what was really encouraging was to see growth in that too. And really to meet those guys where they were in life, and not to cast judgment or just to really say, hey, like, I'm here. And a lot of times guys just lacked friendships. And so being able to be that for someone and being able to walk through their recovery was really, really powerful.
That's cool.
So,
was it mainly like drug and alcohol addiction, Ryan, or was there like a spectrum of different addictions that people were dealing with that you worked with?
primarily drug and alcohol. Yeah. And we had a partnership with the Cooper Institute here in Dallas. And so, a big part of that was being able to have the physical piece of it as well. So working out and, getting good sleep, just kind of healthy habits for these guys, which just was not part of their life. And so, it was great. I had a group of maybe 10 or 15 of us that were kind of similar in age, that were just working a lot of hours, doing overnights with some of these guys. And so
wow,
it was a really, really interesting job to have right out of school. But there's things that I take away from my time there that have still, I carry with me to this day on how I look at things.
It's interesting because to me, it may have helped, it helped you so much translate to what we do now. I know they seem like completely different things, but you were dealing in a situation where you had to really get close to people and really listen to them, be empathetic, understand where they were coming from. I'm sure there was a lot of hope in some of these situations where you saw progress, and there was a lot of heaviness where it was, I know with addiction, a lot of times there's a pretty high fail rate and people are going through it and they're relapsing back. And so there's a lot of struggle there. And, our business is so much about meeting people where they are, and understanding what's driving them, where they're struggling with, where are the obstacles that they're facing. And there's a level of patience with that and getting to where you understand them and then helping them move towards in a positive direction. And so as different as what you did back then to what you're doing now might seem, I'm sure it was very formative for you, especially as a young man. I mean, learning to listen to people. I mean, I'm sure a big part of that job was actually just listening, and knowing that there's more value probably in listening to them and being empathetic than maybe what you actually could tell them to try and fix them, because that wasn't going to really work. And so it just seems like there's probably a lot of value in that, like you're saying, looking back.
You really hit the nail on the head. Yeah, absolutely. Listening was a huge component to it, where, as a 22-year-old, and Tom, I use that term life coach very loosely. There wasn't a lot of just life wisdom that I was handing out, but it was more just being there for these guys and just understanding kind of they had a different family upbringing, whatever it may be, that has ultimately led to them being where they're at. But yeah, I think it was just a really interesting experience that I did for probably about a year and a half. And it taught me really a lot about life.
Yeah, that's incredible. So from there, it said about a year and a half. Where'd you go from there? And then what was the kind of transition decision to move on from there?
Yeah. So this is part of my story, was really later in life, understanding, what I'm good at and my skill set is. And I think in hindsight, I wish I would have done that a little bit earlier, but I went a couple different pathways. When I was in college, I thought, hey, I really want to go work in the sports industry. I want to go work for the Mavs or the Cowboys and do like ticket sales or sponsorship. And so I had a short stint with the Texas Legends here in Frisco, which is the Mavs minor league team. And then I went and worked at a tech company and did sales for them for a couple of years. I had a total pivot point where I went and thought I wanted to get into wealth management for a stretch, and actually went and worked for a wealth management group here in Uptown. And it was through that experience I got exposed to real estate in a very roundabout way, but that was really kind of the beginning of my career into what I do now in land brokerage. And so from that, it was a really eye-opening experience. And it was kind of funny because I initially was pretty dead set on getting into real estate development. And so this is back in 2016, and I started, networking and sitting down with folks. And it's funny because a lot of guys were saying, you know what, hey, I think we're in the 9th inning here. I think things are about to come to a close. And so anyway, through that experience, I had a really cool pivot point where I sat down. I was able to get a meeting with a guy named Steve Van Amberg, who's the CEO of KDC here in Dallas.
Wow.
And through that, I sat down with Steve and just kind of explained, hey, I want to get into real estate. And I really had no direction beyond that. And Steve was kind to take time out of his day. And I remember we sat there at a conference table in their office, and he's listening to me, probably thinking like, this kid doesn't know what he wants in life or as a career. And I remember he took two paper coasters there that were right off the table, and he just started writing down. He's like, all right, you need to go meet with this guy and this guy and this guy. And he just wrote down, maybe 10 to 12, guys there that were all just really heavy hitters at Trammell Crow and CBRE and Rosewood and all these great real estate companies in Dallas, and then proceeded to make introductions on my behalf. And so that was really kind of what cascaded into me sitting down and having a bunch of coffees and meetings with a lot of really, established real estate guys here in Dallas.
That's really cool. It's neat. I've talked to older guys like that have said, like, someone did that for me.
Yeah.
When I was younger, so I want to return the favor.
Yeah.
And in our business, it is so relational. The network is pretty small at the end of the day. And so I think for us now, all three of us, we get those type of requests to grab a coffee or get a lunch. And it's like, we may not be able to, we know we can't hire everybody that's interested in getting into brokerage, but just trying to help people and point them in the right direction, or even just give that kind of insight. But probably the biggest value you can add is opening up your connections. I mean, because you just never get those meetings without some kind of connection.
Yeah. I mean, it was really good experience. And I learned very quickly to kind of, establish, I think what came out of those meetings was I learned maybe necessarily not what I didn't want to do within real estate. And I think also leaning into zeroing in on what my skill set was. For me, I'm not analytical. I'm not great in a spreadsheet, but I am relational, and that's what's led me to brokerage. And so it was just that kind of end of 2016 was really a powerful time for me to be able to network with a lot of guys and learn, what intrigues me, what doesn't, and really just try to, open up a door that way.
So is that what then led to Cushman right at that same timing?
Yes. So I got introduced to, or I got invited to a Bible study here in Dallas that's led by Kent Stainback, and a lot of real estate guys attend that. And so I went one day, and I met a guy named Chris Harden, who was at Cushman Wakefield, and Chris and I just immediately connected, both personally, and I learned a little bit more about what he did as far as brokerage goes. And for me, I think brokerage, I had my preconceived idea of what brokerage looked like. I think a lot of it was used car salesman or really strong extrovert. And so for me, just seeing Chris doing this at a high level was really it caught me off guard. And so anyway, he and I proceeded to sit down several times over the coming months. I went and got my license. And really, Chris, I'm super grateful because he just went to bat for me. I had no experience in real estate, and here he was kind of going to bat for me at a big, global real estate firm, and ultimately fought for me to get a position there. And so went and worked alongside him and another guy named Chris Von Hohn, and we started out doing retail investment sales. So I was working on selling grocery anchored shopping centers across Texas. And so we did that for about a year and a half, at least I did. And then surprisingly, Cushman didn't really have anybody in a land position doing that full time. And so there just became a unique opportunity for me to step into that. And we took on a couple of land assignments, and that really, I could just tell immediately, I gravitated way more to the land piece of it than to the retail piece of it.
Yeah, the shopping centers.
Yeah.
You guys worked on I remember when we sat down and met, you guys were working on some really neat projects too, because that was the timing. It didn't end up being the ninth inning, and things just really ramped up, and land prices ramped up and development. And so I know you worked on that Turtle Creek project with Hanover that was, 2 high rises now, and just incredible project. And so you had a varied experience just getting to work on that team. And Tim, you've known Chris Von Hoen for probably 20 years.
I'd say more than 20 years, maybe 22, 23 years. He's a really good guy. I'm actually in a Bible study with him every week during the school year, and so I get to see him a lot. But he's a great guy.
And Chris Harden, I just have to say, probably I'm not more jealous of him than anyone else because he lives in Colorado. But gets to cover Dallas. And so I've talked to Chris about it, and he's like, you just need to do it. It's like, man, I don't know how he figured it out, but he did. And he definitely, like you said, he doesn't strike you as the stereotypical broker, because he's very professional, very analytical, really good guy, not like the stereotypical that people think, like the car salesman. I always tell our guys, like, we are not car salesmen. That's not how we want to come across. And for any car salesman listening, I know there's good car salesmen, but the stereotypical, car salesman.
High pressure. Yeah.
In your story, I think what's interesting, and you said it, but maybe we can go a little deeper, is you didn't get into brokerage until you were like right around 30. So it was later. And then Tim and I know from being at Newmark, it is hard to bring people on. You would kind of think at the big firms, also because, and you can get into how compensation work, there's not like, big salaries being offered to people coming in, but it's still hard. You have to fight just to get someone at a desk because of desk costs and just how that all works. And at Newmark, it was kind of the same thing when we were there, where we would have ideas and things we want to do, but you'd really have to go to bat to get them approved, even if they were things that we were willing to fund. So maybe talk about both sides of that, like getting in to the brokerage business a little bit later in life than a lot of other people. And did you feel behind it all? Was that challenging? And then also just from a financial standpoint, you were married and I think you had just had your firstborn. So that's a lot of pressure because of just the way the compensation works.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, like you said, I was 30 years old when I got my first job at Cushman, and Chris really initially, they were on the fence about hiring me. We had 2 division presidents, and one of them was Rand Holman, who ultimately really believed in me and ultimately awarded me the opportunity to go work there. And so it's a pretty intense process to get there, and I've obviously had a greater appreciation for it now. Just that door that opened for me, and then really just being inside being able to get exposure to the type of big high profile assignments that we were awarded. And so just getting to learn that, but at the same time, I mean, I shared Cushman had just gone away with a draw, for those unfamiliar, in a brokerage world, you can kind of draw against, funds from the company to kind of help you keep afloat and then pay those back as you produce. And so, it was I was 30, we had a mortgage, we had our firstborn. And so really a big leap of faith for me, and really grateful for both the Chris Harden and Von Hoen for recognizing that and putting me on deals that I had little or no involvement, just to kind of keep me afloat. But it was very lean, first couple of years. A lot of days of commuting up and down the tollway in traffic, of just being like, hey, am I doing the right thing here? And obviously at age 30, you're kind of at a point where you look around and your peers are taking the next step in their jobs, whether they're getting promoted or, buying the next move up house, all of that, just VP titles, all of it that comes with people's others' progression and having to fight that comparison battle.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Ryan,
hard. I think the comparison part of just our culture.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I was thinking as you were talking about your work in the addiction space, how good of a foundation that was probably for the comparison. Because there are people that they are buying the next house, they are making the next step, but they don't have that foundation of kind of like the reality of a lot of the dangers and hurdles and pitfalls you can fall into if your focus is that. And so your story, I think of like God opening all these doors and it taking you a little bit longer to figure out where you wanted to go, but then he opened all those doors for you to go those places. It's really cool because I think probably in your own life, you have a lot more dependence on him than you would have if it would have just all kind of worked out right out of college, just because there's been so many hard times.
Yeah, absolutely. My story is like I just want to be so quick to point to the Lord and just be able to say like how I've gotten here is a miracle, and just how the Lord has placed people like Steve Van Amberg and Chris Harden and Chris Von Hoen and you in my life to be able to open doors that on paper really have no business being opened for me. And so I think being able to just recognize that how the Lord's gone before me in so many different phases of my life to put me where I am today, it's not lost on me.
I was going to ask Ryan, what gave you the confidence to make that decision? Because it's a pretty incredible decision to be that age, to have a baby and a wife and a mortgage and all these things you had, and then to go start in a new industry, new career. You're going to have to learn and start doing these deals and not having the safety net of a salary or draw. Because I'm sure the temptation was, well, I could just go get a job with a salary and be comfortable, not taking a risk, and just kind of go that way. But you chose a very, difficult path and took a lot of risk and sacrifice. Can you talk about kind of what gave you that confidence of like, all right, I mean, and maybe it was just like feeling like this is where God wants me, and I don't have all the answers, and it's going to have to be a step of faith. But that was a pretty courageous step that you took at that point. And then I'm sure, like you said, it was hard even the years after that. Did I make the right call? Should I keep persevering through this?
Yeah, it's great. I would say, like, going back to that season where I was having a bunch of coffees and networking, trying to crack into the real estate industry. Thankfully, I had the insight to be able to kind of just do quick recaps after my meeting and take notes on just any sort of takeaways that I had. And I think as I did that, I remember looking back, I think I had upwards of 60 or 65 different coffees, lunches, meetings with folks. And I think when I went back and looked, just to kind of skim my notes, one of the reoccurring themes that really popped up for me was just that when I looked at a lot of these guys that had been successful in real estate, the underlining theme throughout all of them, or a lot of them, was just their willingness to kind of bet on themselves and be able to take risks in life. And I think that was really challenging to me. Obviously, I could have gone the W-2 route and just, gotten paid every 2 weeks. And there's times in brokerage where you're like, that sounds pretty good right now.
Yeah.
But that was a big takeaway, I think, from my time, sitting down with these guys that were, 20 years ahead of me and had done well, that they had sort of gone outside of the norm and taken on big risks in their life. I also realized too that, at 30, I'm not getting any younger and with a mortgage. And I was like, hey, if I'm ever going to make this jump, now is the time. It's only going to get harder from here. And so thankfully I just had a really supportive wife who believed in me. Thankfully we'd both been working. We had some savings, and lived reasonably. And so not being just living paycheck to paycheck and having that burden, I think all of those kind of culminated into like helping me get through those first, 2-3 years.
Yeah, I was thinking of the strain that could cause on your marriage.
Yeah.
Just, they say that like financial strain on a marriage is the most difficult.
Yeah.
That is more than anything else. It's the hardest to kind of recover from. And so like Tim pointed out, and like you said, making that big change, not knowing, obviously trusting the Lord, but that's very difficult a lot of times. And then being in the middle of it and it's difficult and you got your long commute and it's frustrating and you're trying to learn, but then you also have that pressure of like, I'm trying to learn, but then I've got to get stuff going. Like I can't just like take my time learning. I have to actually I have to produce because otherwise I won't be able to put food on the table. And so it's really cool to see how, you and Summer and just how you've prioritized your marriage and also just you're being a father, like expanding your family, prioritizing your family, now to think about you, sending your kids to Prestonwood, just how cool that is. You're getting to now create this new legacy and to think about, the point you just said, you don't know what happens if you don't take that risk, and you don't take the risk of doing it, trusting God that He provided, kind of open those doors. Yeah. And then you say, no, I'm going to go this way. So it's neat. It's fun to look back and see where you've come from and where we've all come from. Not even that, long of a period of time. Yeah. So,
well, and it makes me grateful. We touched on this a little bit at our retreat last week. I think just of recognizing how, as the leaders of DMRE, we've emphasized the importance just of family, and brokerage can be a a pretty big grind. I think, early on, a lot of late nights, a lot of working. But I think being able to have the support, I think, from the leadership, just to be able to say like, hey, go be home for dinner and be able to go to your kid's football game or whatever it may be, where I know that is not the norm, I think, in the brokerage world.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that. It's a good point. Like on the trip, we were talking about why we exist and why we've decided to make a brokerage that's different, where we do work together. And one of the things was, especially as we're all getting older and our kids are getting older, and it's not just going and getting home for dinner and to put them to bed, but it's like there's going to be recitals and there's going to be sporting events and games. And, Tim and David are a little bit older than us. And so they're already coaching a lot of their kids, and you're starting to coach your kids. And I'm getting to that point with mine, and like just wanting to be engaged in their lives and a part of their lives. And you read so many stories about successful people. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I think it was the Mr. Wonderful podcast, Tim, that you sent me.
Yeah.
But he talked about like how he's made so much money and he's done so well. And he's like, well, I didn't have a relationship with my kids, but they understand,
Yeah.
And so he kind of like, it was a little flippant, like they understand because I made a lot of money. And so we're good. And now we have a great relationship and they're all grown up. But for me, that's not how I want to be as a dad.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, he was never around. Mom did everything, and because he had to work so hard, because at some point you realize we're just trying to make extra money to never be home at dinner, to always be gone, to always be traveling. And so I do think that's something we talked about, was like, how can we help support one another? It's like Trey's on a trip right now. His kids aren't school age. And so he goes on his kind of summer trips once school starts back up, partially so that he can support us when we're gone during the actual summer. But then also now it's like, I told Trey, like, I'm calling your wife if you keep sending out offers and doing stuff. I got on him last night because he was like, sent an offer out, and I was like, what are you doing? Do I need to call Nicole? Because that's the point, is we want to be able to also just be like out on vacation. And that's hard. I think that's hard for all of us because we also really enjoy what we do. Yeah. So sometimes on vacation, you're checking in because maybe we're a little like addicted to just what's going on, what's going on back at the office. But our families recognize when we're not present and when we're not there and where our priorities are. And so I think that's so important. And that's definitely a goal that we all have. It's encouraging one another, challenging one another to be more present with our families, to do more of those things that they're not going to, in the short term, make it look like you're going to add deals to the pipeline. But in the long term, I think it'll be so much better for each of us as individuals, and husbands and fathers, and probably will give us a lot better long-term career because we prioritize the right things.
Yeah. I think about, our kids are our greatest legacy, that as they grow older, and no one's going to remember, some tract of land that I sold, when I'm gone. But I think just the impact that being able to be present and to just be there for our kids, I think, so I'm just grateful that we've got alignment as far as how we see things as a company, and it affords us the opportunity to go do that. Obviously we work hard when we're here, but I think we're not, leaving the office at 10 o'clock at night. So I'm grateful for just how we've approached that as a company.
Yeah, I think embracing the truth that we're all in this business to make a lot of money. You can make a lot of money, more money in this business in a lot of different careers. But I think the point is using that money that we make to be a blessing to our families and to build a foundation that's healthy. And like you guys are saying, the money is so empty if it's only about the money. And there's so many people in our business on the brokerage side and the development side that you see their life and there's all the success, but the only thing that they're really chasing is more success. And it's pretty meaningless, because if you don't have a good marriage, if you don't have a good family, you're not able to be there for your kids, you're missing out on life. The thing that really matters in life is the relationships that we have, the community that we have, friends and family, and getting to be there for those special times, for the good times and the hard times, and to be present and to be able to pour all of yourself into that. And work can be a game that we play that can take over our life. And I think we all struggle with that because we do want to win. And I think we're all type A, and it can get to where you're thinking about work when you're with your wife or when you're with your kids or when you're on vacation. And there's an addictive part of that, I think, that we can all struggle with. But being able to be on a team and hold each other accountable and support each other and help each other And then to see that modeled in each other, that, Tom's, with his kids, or he's, the phone's off because he's with Jackie, or the same with you, Ryan. I think that's so valuable. And that's what we all want, because this is going to be a long marathon for each of us to be successful in this business. And what's going to be meaningful at the end of it when we're done is that we didn't miss out on those special times with the people we loved while we were creating that success.
Yeah. Yeah. The pull is always there. I mean, as you mentioned, our phone doesn't stop, and we're getting emails at all hours of the day for sure. And it takes a lot of discipline. And there's been seasons where I've done a better job than others, and other times where I've not done as well. But I think having the discipline to really kind of turn off the phone, once I get in the door, and not take calls, and to be present, and still log on later at night sometimes, just to maybe address some time sensitive things. But all in all, I think really just sort of being present when I'm here in the office and working on deals, but to not be just grinding all the time at the detriment of my family.
There's kind of two things I was thinking as we probably spend our last few minutes here on this episode, but maybe just bringing it up to current, when you decided to make the shift over to DMRE, and how it is, we Tim and I, coming from a big brokerage, we've tried to set the company up a little bit differently. And so that was, I know, a transition for you, like coming over to more of this team environment where we only do land, and that's the focus. We're really trying to build this platform, and maybe connecting that to just another concept in an area that I think you've shown a lot of just leadership, is having a strong community of guys around you. And I always thought it was really cool whenever we would talk, you would talk to me about like, well, I'm going to go pray with my small group, my group of guys from Watermark about it, and always meeting with those guys, always being in each other's lives. And God provides that for us sometimes in seasons. And so it's not like we have that maybe forever, but maybe just speaking to that, because I think for a lot of guys, they don't have maybe friendships or relationships, whether or not, like you said earlier, some of those guys struggling with addictions didn't have friendships. It's very easy to get isolated and to chase this success, and it isolates you a lot of times. And I think you've done a really good job of always wanting to have a strong community around you that you could go to, that they could be an encouragement, but also you could encourage one another and pray together. So I know that factored into you making the changeover, and then deciding to, stick it out when things got really difficult just in the market a couple of years ago.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Because, the second half of my time at Cushman, Chris Harden, my partner, was in Colorado, and then COVID happened, and that was limiting his travel back to Dallas. And so there was a stretch there where it was a lot of just, hey, driving into the office, fighting traffic, sitting at a desk by myself, and working, and then just kind of going home. And so I think being able to step into this environment here at DMRE with, a growing team, and being able to just constantly walk down the hallway and having this team mentality, I think being able to bounce ideas or go, pitch deals together, I think has been really, really life-giving for me. And so, at least work-wise, and then, personally, I think being able to have a subset of guys in my life that I can call on, that are, checking in with me, and also asking about work, but more importantly, I think asking just about, hey, how are you loving your wife? How are you loving your family? Keeping me accountable. And I think just having that touch point, I think is really, it's hard, I think, for guys specifically to really go out and try to find that. And we get pulled a lot of different ways with our time, and throw ourselves at our work. And so I think being able to have like deep, meaningful relationships with guys as we go through, things in life where there's no playbook for parenting, and, hey, I'm struggling with this with my kid, and, leaning on guys that are pulling you closer to Christ, following up with you, praying for you, things like that. I think that's been like one of the biggest blessings of my life for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think what you're talking about is real relationships and real connection. And for a lot of guys, either they are completely isolated and there's no real friendships in their life. Their life is their work. And there's that kind of isolation, or there's an isolation where they're still social. They're going and having drinks, with the guys, or they're going to games, or they're whatever, but it's so surface level, and they're not talking about these real issues in their life or the real aches that they're going through that we all have. And they're not opening up to someone in a place that's safe and getting encouragement, being challenged, maybe being called out when they need to, but also being affirmed in a way that really touches their heart. And that's so life-giving, and it's so healthy. I think it protects you so much from all these issues of, self-medicating and, being isolated and really having your legacy taken down, which we see happen so many times even with good men when they get isolated. So I think it's a key thing to distinguish what you're talking about is real healthy relationships versus, I have friends and I have acquaintances and I see so-and-so and, we kind of talk and stuff. There's no real depth, to a lot of people's relationships.
Yeah. I think about that too, where, the three of us here are, some of the oldest in the office here, having just coming off the retreat with some of these younger guys, I realize like these guys are engaged and getting married and just kind of starting out, just coming out of school. A lot of our new hires have been, freshly just right out of school. And so I think that's been a really cool opportunity to be able to step into those guys' life and just be 10, 15 years ahead of them and be a resource for them in that regard. But I think on the flip side of that, it's also been really important to go pursue guys that are older than us, that are 10, 15 years ahead of us and been in a mentor type role for us, just to always continue to seek that and to never feel like you've got it all figured out.
Yeah, I feel like the older that we get, the more, and I guess this is like a saying, but the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah.
The older you get, the more you need encouragement. And I think for me, just within the context of work, it's always been incredible to have Tim and David, who are both, a give or take 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
And so that's been seeing them experience a lot of things that I'm experiencing personally with my family, but they did it 10 years ago. And we've been working together that long now. It's like, I remember when they were having kids, and then now the decisions they're making, even things like we talked about, like just the example that David always sets with like, hey, I'm going to be gone at 4:00 because I'm coaching softball, or I'm going to be super involved in his girls' lives, which is really neat because I know a lot of guys, I know guys that are involved, but I don't know a lot of guys that say, what David says, which is like, as long as they're in my house, like I'm going to do everything I can to be very involved in their lives. And he will be later, but he has this opportunity now where he can, which is really cool. And now to hear that his oldest just interned at Trammell Crow Residential, I was like, what? I remember when she was like 5, and so it's just crazy. The time's really going to go fast for us with our kids. Your kids are a little bit older than mine, but I know even just when we start working together, kids were still in diapers, pretty much. So it's like, well, mine still are, but it's pretty wild just how fast it goes.
It's true. I shared this with you last week. I mean, my daughter oldest, who's going into 5th grade now, it's technically considered middle school at our school, and they share the same building as the high school. So it was a really surreal moment with first week of school last week, walking her in and seeing, the high school senior football player alongside of us. And it just really, I don't know, for whatever reason, it hit home for me just to be like, man, just dropping my daughter off to middle school and this is really happening. And so I've shared this too. I think really just going back to my appreciation for being aligned with just this work-life balance. Because I really think that, the next 5 to 8 years are just going to be the absolute most critical and impactful season from a parenting standpoint, certainly with my oldest and with our middle. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It can be overwhelming at times, but I also think I'm super excited just to be where I am.
Well, we've really enjoyed having you on the team. Tim, sorry, you have a question?
I just have one more question real quick as we close. I know we're getting a little bit long, but I'd love for you to share, Ryan, just briefly. You mentioned how your wife believed in you and, going through the season and making the difficult decision again to real estate and the challenges there. But then, our business is tough and there's deals blowing up. There's really tough weeks and there's tough months. There's tough markets. Maybe just briefly talk about the ways that you knew that she believed in you, that she supported you, she's affirmed you, kind of how that worked out in your life. And I think it's so critical to recognize the value of that. That's such a gift. And that's a part of your success. Because if she had been not believing you and everything that happened, see, we shouldn't be doing this deal blew up, and sort of maybe a Debbie Downer, or they're having a lot of negativity and pulling you down with that, maybe you would have had to bail at some point and go do something else. So if you don't mind just really briefly kind of just talking about that dynamic, because it seems like such an important part of your story.
It is. It's such a huge piece, probably for all of us, really. I mean, just, y'all starting the company, but for me personally, Summer, my wife, has just been unwavering. And there was never a season where it was just like, hey, like, what are we doing here? It was always supportive and being like, we've made the right decision here. And again, I know I said this before, but I've had a greater appreciation looking back on that, because I think, starting out in this business and being pretty lean those first couple of years, I can't imagine the added strain or the burden that would have been had she had a different posture about that and said, like, hey, like, you need to quit this, or I don't believe this is the right path. And never once was that the case. And I think just that would have made things like that much more complicated and stressful for me. And so just having that support from your wife, I think, is just been one of the biggest blessings to have, and to be able to just see the overall big picture in this, and just to say, like, I trust in the Lord more so than I do you, and just know that, like, He's going to take care of us, and I'm supportive in any way possible. And so that for me was such a blessing. And I also think, both of us at the time were working, which helped alleviate some of that financial stress, which I know not everyone has that opportunity, but I think just being able to have that support day in and day out, and to also just not hold on to every single deal and just to white knuckle it. I think just to hold everything loosely. And I think that's taken some time, just over years in this business, of understanding that is a big part of our business, is that inevitably deals are going to fall out.
Well, it's so bonding, for you and your wife, because I think we go back, I look at my marriage, and my career, and there's these times at the time it's so stressful and you're going through it together, but you don't realize the blessing that is at the time, because you get through that struggle and your wife supports you through it, and she encourages you through it, and she's there for you. And then you can look back and there's that incredible bonding, and there's that gift of that period and how you got through it together. And then you see God's blessing on the other end. And then there's going to be different challenges, whether it's with kids or whatever it is, the health issues or challenges that come with this life. But, building that marriage is just like a rock, foundation. These are the really key things that can really build it up. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of us, or everyone who's listening to this, is, who's married or in a relationship. You're working on your relationship. You want to have a strong relationship. And it's just great to see that model for you and your wife and how you work through that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I know I shared it on our little mountaintop experience, but I think one of the things I really appreciate about you is just the maturity that you bring to the office. And maturity is not always an age thing, but I think your experience that you've had and the hard times, it's so important to be able to bring that for these younger guys, and even encourage one another, because we still go through hard times.
Yeah.
In all these different parts of life that we're talking about, personal and professional. But your perspective on having a foundation in the Lord, that's the only thing that's going to be unshakable. And times will get hard. There's frustrations. I mean, Tim and I were talking about that the other day on some stuff, that a couple deals that, we thought for sure, those are going to close, and then they, fall out last minute, kind of a thing. And it's just kind of, we're used to that at this point. But when you're not so focused on just the short term and the deals, and when you have a bigger purpose than that, and a trust that goes much deeper than that. And so just knowing that you're here, being able to encourage others, and that message of, like, there's more than just what you can see right now, and stick with it, have a longer term mindset, and just being able to share from personal experience. I think that's where, when you can share from personal experience, it's so powerful for people, because whenever we're in the middle of something, whether it's good or bad, you have a hard time picturing it any different. You either think, it's never going to get better, or it's never going to get worse, and that things are so great, but life's difficult, and God's always trying to draw us back to more dependence on Him. And so I appreciate that you can bring that to the office and to the other guys.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been interesting, because we've had some since I've been in the business. We had COVID, and then we had interest rates spike in 22, and so we've had some scary corrections. And so I think being able to work through those and being able to talk to the younger guys and just say, hey, I'm still really bullish on the DFW market, and I think that we have a lot of land, here. So I think just being able to not get caught in the weeds, and just know that there's going to be seasons of up and down always in our business. And so being able to ride out the hard times, I think is really a differentiator in our business.
Well, Ryan, thanks for being on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your story, some of your story. I know we could go a lot longer, but this was a lot of fun, and it's fun to get to work with you every day. We'll have you back on to talk about the market and more of what you do day to day and clients you work with and that kind of thing. But this was great. So thanks for being willing to share.
I loved it.
Yeah, good job, Ryan.
Guys. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. Well, so check out the DMRE website, DMRE.com. You can get contact information for Ryan Duffie here in our Dallas office, also myself, and then Tim in our Houston office. We'd love to connect with you. If you have questions about the show today, or just have suggestions, things that you would want us to look at, land you own, land you might be interested in, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you have questions about land you own in Texas, send us an email at texaslandguys@dmre.com and follow us on LinkedIn to stay updated.